We're tremendously excited that it's now showtime.
It has been years in the making, and now the big college football playoff national championship weekend is here.
Manhandling Michigan, dominating them from start to finish, and booking that revenge tour matchup, they hope, with Alabama and Indy.
All eyes will be on the prize come Monday. I'll have more on the college football playoff national championship game in downtown Indianapolis coming up.
Tens of thousands of football fans are in downtown Indianapolis this weekend ahead of the big matchup, and businesses, restaurants, and hotels are anxious to cash in. Teams and fans expected to generate $150 million in economic impact. Visit Indy's Chris Gall is here to break down the numbers. Plus, CFP Executive Director Bill Hancock explains why Indy is the perfect fit for this year's national championship game. On those stories and much more ahead on this special edition of Inside Indiana Business.
This is the launching of downtown Indianapolis for 2022.
Indeed, planning and preps have been underway since Indy was awarded the bid to host the big game in 2017. College football's biggest stage brings with it the potential for $150 million in economic impact, and more than 100,000 visitors descending upon downtown Indianapolis. Hello and welcome to Inside Indiana Business. I'm Gerry Dick. Well, Monday night's 2022 college football playoff national championship game, it's a rematch as number 1 Alabama takes on number 3 Georgia. The Bulldogs seeking to avenge a loss to the Crimson Tide in the SEC championship game. It is the second major sporting event the city has hosted in less than a year. You may remember last spring, the entirety of the Division I men's basketball tournament was played in central Indiana. Hosting big-time sporting events, Indianapolis has made it an industry and very much part of its brand. Sporting events have boosted the city's economy by billions of dollars over the past 4 decades. Take a look at the biggest sporting events just of the past decade in Indianapolis and the impact. The 3 top events: Super Bowl 2012, $176 million in economic impact. This year's college football national championship playoff game, $150 million. The 2016 NCAA men's Final Four, $125 million. With more on how the impact of this weekend will extend far beyond the playing field at Lucas Oil Stadium, pleased to welcome back to the show Visit Indy Senior Vice President Chris Gall. Chris, welcome. I know you're at Fan Central, where the activity is heating up in downtown Indianapolis. It's here after all these years of planning. How big of an event is this for Indianapolis?
Well, it's a huge win, Gary. It's a great way to kick off 2022 from a tourism and economic standpoint. You can hear buzzing around me. I am inside the Indiana Convention Center, where a key component of this weekend, the Playoff Fan Central, is located. This is where many of the 100,000 fans will descend. It's free and open to the public, and so the final touches going on right now. It's so rewarding after being awarded this game in 2017 to have all the pieces coming together, many of which were successfully put in place for the Super Bowl a decade ago, and now more recently for the March Madness and totality games. So it's very rewarding, a sense of pride from Team Indy as we get ready for this.
Yeah, so 10 years ago, doesn't seem like it's been that long ago, but obviously the Super Bowl. We aren't getting Super Bowl weather from back then, unfortunately, but I know it's going to be hot in terms of the activity downtown. Chris, economic impact, $125 million, $150 million, we talked about that. But beyond that, in terms of the attention, all the other things that go with it, how substantial is that?
Well, if you're in the business of marketing a city and driving tourism and thinking about the economics of recovering from the pandemic, this could not be more perfectly placed in our calendar to kick off the year, to have all eyes on Indianapolis again, and specifically with 1,000 national media descending on Indianapolis. They're going to be talking about the X's and O's, but also the host city amidst this backdrop of this major event that other cities would crave to have. And so that's very desirable for us. We know that a lot of these 100,000 fans are also C-suite executives. They wield the power to decide where meetings and conventions and offices could relocate. So it's not only the quantity of fans, it's the quality of fans that will be coming here to Indianapolis, in addition to that abnormal amount of national media coverage that will help boost the brand of Indy.
Yeah, I know this is ESPN's biggest production of the year, so all eyes on Indianapolis. And this is a big weekend for the convention business, too, because I know you're hosting some potential conventions at the game for this weekend to show how Indianapolis does its thing that could have big impact down the road.
Oh, we use each and every major sporting event as a backdrop to say, hey, come kick the tires, see what Indianapolis can do for a citywide event. And so we have 8 meeting decision makers from across the United States racing to Indianapolis. We'll host them for the weekend. They'll see the game. They'll see the city. They'll walk inside the convention center and see how the package and hotels are connected, no matter the climate. And if all of them say yes, it's $400 million in potential future convention business. So we're excited about that ripple effect, the tangential benefit of hosting this big weekend.
Yeah, how important, Chris, in your view, is the timing of this kind of impact event? Any time is going to have big impact. But with what Indianapolis and everybody else in the country has gone through for the past almost 2 years, what does it mean to have this event now in Indianapolis?
For those behind me that are working in the tourism industry that depend on tourism for a paycheck, this is much needed. It keeps our streak alive. It keeps our proof of concept alive that we can host live in-person events. In addition to that, you think about our recovery. We're at about 85% recovered right now, Gary. And so by the end of 2022, we anticipate, in large part because of this event sticking here with us at the beginning of the year, by the end of 2022, we'll be 100% recovered. When you look at hotel occupancy and number of conventions, we'll be back to pre-pandemic levels. So the timing of this gives us confidence, it gives other event organizers confidence, and it gives Team Indy what it needs to start the year.
That indeed is big news in terms of getting back to pre-pandemic levels. Chris, as we wrap up, competition for these events, very, very intense, continues to be so. So this is a chance to put Indianapolis to the test again. And more events are out in the future. We've got an NBA All-Star game coming up, a rescheduled All-Star game that's coming up. So more events down the road.
Absolutely. It's again, this confidence builder and booster for sporting events and major trade shows and conventions. And so we look to this, and then we'll have to turn the page, Gary, quite frankly and quickly, and say what's next and how are we preparing. So another great way to start the year, and one that we've been planning for since 2017.
All right, Chris Gall, Senior VP at Visit Indy. Chris, thanks for taking the time. A big weekend for Indianapolis and the state of Indiana. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Gary.
All right. Well, 2 teams from the Deep South squaring off for all the marbles in a bit chillier climate here in Indiana. More on the economic impact of the College Football Playoff National Championship game between Georgia's Bulldogs and the Crimson Tide of Alabama when we come back. Well, the College Football Championship game's buck stops on this man's desk, and neither he nor the desk are strangers to Indianapolis. Bill Benner has more in this week's Inside Indiana Sports. Bill.
Gary, thanks. From humble beginnings in Oklahoma to orchestrating college football's biggest game has been quite the journey for the CFP's executive director. And it's safe to say that Monday night's battle between Alabama and Georgia might not be in Indy without the positive experiences that Bill Hancock had previously had here. And we're honored to have the CFP executive director, Bill Hancock, join us. Sir, welcome. Good to see you.
Well, good to see you, Bill. And as I like to say to my friends around here, I'm just happy to be back home again in Indiana.
Well, and we're happy to have you back home again in Indiana. You were here for a while working with the NCAA and orchestrating the Final Four. Before we look forward to this weekend, Bill, let's look back to the decision 4 years ago to bring this game to Indianapolis. It had always been in warm weather locales. Kind of what was the thinking about that in general and Indianapolis in particular?
You know, Bill, college football is a national game. It belongs to everybody. The championship should belong to everybody. And we made a conscious decision to go to a city in the quote unquote northern tier. Actually, our philosophy was 10 in 10. That being the first 10 years of the CFP championship game would be in 10 different cities. And when we look north, Indianapolis was a natural.
And of course, your experience here previously with the NCAA, with numerous Final Fours that took place in Indianapolis, and then you finally lived in the city for 3 years. Obviously, you've got good vibes, and you know the landscape.
Yeah, I do. How about this? We've had 8 Final Fours here, men's Final Fours here in Indianapolis, and I've been able to attend all 8 of them. I think you have too, but there's not many of us who can say that. And I've seen what this city can do through all those years. I think it's 40 some years now since that first one in Market Square. Seen the changes in the city, but one thing has been constant, and it is the legendary Hoosier hospitality. And we're going to experience it again this weekend with a CFP championship.
Well, and without question, the volunteer force, great local staff on hand, led by Susan Boffman. Bill, again, you're working with people that you know personally and have had great experiences with.
Yeah, it's a matter of trust. You know, I trust Susan, I trust Mark Howell, I trust Eric and all the people at the stadium. They know what they're doing. You gain that trust by having worked with people through the years, but also by knowing that they've administered many successful top tier events, all the Final Fours, the Super Bowl. We know we just have a great relationship, and the city has some obligations for this event, and they have more than fulfilled their obligations.
Bill, talk about, we received some criticism earlier in the week from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution about the weather and concerns about that. But again, this is a very compact campus that's been laid out downtown in Indianapolis. And I think people, as they arrive, will find out that it's convenient, and they can stay mostly inside as they enjoy the activities.
I accused an Indianapolis friend of planting that story in Atlanta because, you know, we all bowed our necks and reared up and said, you're wrong about that. I don't know the columnist who wrote the story, you might, but it let us throw a couple of barbs back and forth. And that reminded me of the governors making bets on the game. You know, I'll give you a side of beef and you give me a passel full of corn or whatever. So that was a lot of fun. We did have a great event in Atlanta. Atlanta's a great city. We had terrible weather there, and it was cold and rainy, and we had a presidential visit that caused a lot of trouble. So yeah, all the cities where we've been have been great, including Indianapolis.
And Bill, as we wrap up, there has been talk about expansion beyond the Power Five, and Cincinnati was a welcome addition this year to the 4 teams in the semifinals. But again, potential talk about expanding from 4 teams to as many as maybe 12.
Yeah, we had appointed a committee to work on a proposal to change the format. We have a 12-year contract for this format. And this committee was looking primarily at what to do in year 13 and came up with a proposal that we sent folks out to the campuses to talk to presidents, coaches, ADs, and student athletes about the recommendation to go to 12 last June. And folks have been talking about it ever since then. And I don't know how it will come out. I'm not a betting man. I don't handicap things, but it has been a robust discussion, and a lot of people feel like expanding to 12 would be what's best for college football. We'll just have to see how it comes out.
Well, Bill Hancock, Executive Director of the College Football Playoff, it is wonderful to see you back home again in Indiana. We wish you nothing but the best for a great and successful event this weekend. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Bill. Appreciate you doing this, and we'll see you this weekend.
And Gerry, back to you.
All right, Bill, thank you. Well, Indianapolis's secret sauce for hosting world-class sporting events, a large and devoted army of volunteers. Our Mary Rachel Redmond with the story as our special coverage of the National College Football Championship continues. Well, it takes a village to pull off big events like the College Football National Championship. The thousands of Hoosier volunteers who've stepped up to the plate over the years have been really a big key to Indy's success as a recognized sports capital. For this event, organizers took a different approach, mixing veteran volunteers with newbies.
One was to bring some new energy, some new creativity and innovation to folks who might not have been overly influenced by things we had done in the past. And the second is to continue to increase our bench strength with knowledge transfer. So as we get more and more championship events, we've got more and more people who can bring previous event experience to those.
Now, the city is going to need that new blood to continue hosting big-time events. You know, back in the 60s and 70s, a sleepy downtown earned Indianapolis the nickname Naptown because, well, there wasn't much going on. But Indy has seen itself go from Naptown to Sportstown in a magical story that has garnered international attention. But it didn't happen overnight. As our Mary Rachel Redmond reports, it's been that loyal fleet of Hoosier volunteers who've truly helped turn Indy into a world-class host city.
It's a place that's within 500 miles of most Americans. This dynamic city that's no secret anymore. It's Indianapolis.
Geographically, Indy is definitely convenient, especially for a fan base that likes to road trip. But balmy beaches and palm trees aren't on the menu, which begs the question, how did Indianapolis transform itself into a mecca of sorts for top-tier sporting events? The answer is simple.
The volunteers here in Indiana and central Indiana are really the secret sauce that makes these events so special and why the event organizers seek us out.
From the early 80s, Indianapolis has played host to some of the biggest sporting events in the world. From the National Sports Festival in 1982.
I would have to think sports-wise, one of, if not the most dramatic moments in the city of Indianapolis.
The 10th Pan American Games in Indianapolis, Indiana.
Plus 8 Final Fours dating back to 1980. And of course, the 2012 Super Bowl.
Well, let's not underestimate the Pan Am Games and the RCA Dome. Let's give a moment of silence for the RCA Dome and what that meant, not only from an event venue in the Midwest, but putting a winning team on the field. Peyton Manning and the Colts, that's big too. Winning, success, all those things brought notoriety to Indianapolis. And then from there, good people took a little fortune and really put hard work in to make it happen.
The house that Peyton built over the last 4 decades, Indy has hosted hundreds of major sporting events, generating billions of dollars in economic impact. But none of it would have been possible without the help of Hoosier volunteers. Mel Raines, president of Pacers Sports and Entertainment, tells me Indianapolis volunteers have quite the reputation, especially with the NFL.
And I've been to a lot of other major events in other cities, and they can't deliver the volunteer corps that we can. And I will tell you, from the Super Bowl, the NFL would often tell us that our volunteers were better than any paid staff they had in any other city. It was just such a success for the city, and it was because of those people. I mean, that was what made it so special.
So the next time you hear someone ask how Indianapolis became a sports city, perhaps the best answer is the people.
I'm a native Hoosier. I just think we always have known that we don't have the mountains and we don't have the ocean, and it's January and we're hosting the biggest event in the country this month. And if we're not going to have those things, we're going to have to deliver in every other way. And I think people just take great pride that when you come here for an event and people still say it was the best Super Bowl they've ever been to, that's part of what we provide.
Mary Rachel Redmond, Inside Indiana Business.
And we'll be right back. Well, it has been years in the making, and now all the hard work by the Indy 2022 College Football Championship Host Committee about to pay off. With more on how Indy is prepared for this weekend and defending its reputation as an elite big event host city, pleased to welcome back to the show, as always, Indy College Football Playoff Inc. President Susan Boffman. And Susan, as always, welcome to the show.
Thanks.
And you're standing, your eyes are open, you're showing no worse for the wear. You've been a very busy lady for the past several years. Encapsulate it, if you would, on how much work, how much planning, how much preparation has gone into getting ready for this weekend.
The behind the scenes work and planning really is amazing when you think back on it. So for 3 years, we've been working with a committee of over 450 community volunteers to pull together great, unique ideas, and this is the week to let it go. We're going to see how it all works out.
Well, and you mentioned volunteers, and a lot has been said about that over the years, but people calling that Indy's secret sauce is the volunteer force that's out there, and that I know is going to play a big role this year.
Yeah, I think it is our secret sauce, and not in addition to this host committee that we have about 2,000 volunteers that are working this week, everything from courtesy car drivers to hospitality to helping with team services, and without them, we wouldn't be able to pull all these things off.
Yeah. Indianapolis, obviously, reputation for hosting the biggest sporting events. As you look at them, and you've been involved in so many Final Four, Super Bowl, where does this stack up? How would you kind of put this in the hierarchy, if you will?
Yeah, this is one of the elite, big national events that we really like to have here in the city. I think it's much like the Final Four in that the fans that come in are for sure sport fans. They're here for football. They've got a team in the hunt here, and so it's all about the sport. I think it's like Super Bowl in the fact that it has a lot of pageantry as well, but Super Bowl is very corporate guests. So I think that this is one we'd really seek to have back here. We're filling hotel rooms. We're going to have a huge crowd of out-of-town visitors making the place sing this weekend. It's going to be really spirited. Is there a level of, for lack of a better term, pressure that's on you and others, the organizers? Because, again, Indy's reputation is so strong nationally and around the globe for hosting events. But, you know, these are big events, so many moving parts to make sure things go well. Yeah, 100%. I think we feel pressure every single day, but the great thing is that's really motivating, and we know that our community partners are going to help lift this event up just like they have on the other ones. I think we want it to be the best event it can be, but we welcome the next event to be the next best event, right? So we're just trying to make it special and unique and leave a real impression in the minds of those who visit Indianapolis as a wonderful place to come back, to work, to play, to visit. You mentioned making it special and unique, and that's one thing that I think Indianapolis has always excelled at, is doing something different to make it special, to make it unique. That can't be an easy thing to do after doing it year after year after year. How do you do that? How does that happen, that you create these, you know, for the Super Bowl Village as an example? How do you come up with those ideas? I mean, to me, it comes through discussion, collaboration, having all these community volunteers and event professionals in our city. It's almost like a think tank. And so we start with one idea, and sometimes you end up with that idea, but a lot of times it leads you down the road and you come up with something really new, innovative, and then we make it happen. The execution is possible here. Yeah. Georgia, Alabama on Monday night, going to be a huge game, but that's, you know, then it's on to the next one. So as you look to the future, there are Final Fours out there, the NBA All-Star game rescheduled to 2024. So still more big events out there for Indianapolis. Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, there's no place better than Indy. You get people in town for whichever kind of event. They don't have to drive their cars. They can get in the hotels. They can walk everywhere they want to go, enjoy our great venues. There's no place better. Yeah, one more question I want to ask you too, and that's COVID, because so much planning has gone into this. How has COVID impacted that in terms of adding extra layers of preparation and kind of moving parts, if you will? Yeah, it's been a learning experience, and I think we benefited by seeing others go through the process. So we watched the Indiana Pacers and the Indianapolis Colts and others put together their COVID plans, and so we had the gift of time to watch and learn from that. So we've been working hand in hand with the Marion County Health Department as well as the National CFP staff to figure out what are the best protocols and hopefully have a really safe and a great event for everyone who comes downtown. All right, Susan Boffman, the president of 2022 Indy College Football Playoff, Inc. Susan, great job. Thanks again for your great work and your great service, and we're going to enjoy the game. Thank you. All right. Appreciate it. Well, ahead on our next half hour, why Hoosier manufacturers are becoming more likely to embrace cobots, 3D printing, and all things high tech. We'll break down what results mean from a new study for the state's manufacturing sector. Well, embracing technology can often be challenging, but there are new signs. Indiana manufacturers, logistics companies are not only adopting technology,
but maybe giving it a big bear hug as well. Connexus, Indiana has a new study out to back that up. The numbers show manufacturers in the state that have integrated tech into their workflow doubled between 2020 and 21. For more on why Hoosier manufacturers are seizing opportunities to use augmented reality or put more cobots on the floor, I'm pleased to be joined by Connexus Indiana President and CEO Fred Cartwright. Fred is in Las Vegas at the Consumer Electronics Show. Fred, thanks for joining us.
Great to be here, Gary. Thank you.
Yeah, the event you are at, CES, 175,000 plus people. It is a massive event, and there's a real reason for you to be there, among others, and that is the Indy Autonomous Challenge. We saw those autonomous race cars flying around the Indianapolis Motor Speedway in October. There's going to be an event this week at CES, kind of that next iteration or that next step in the process for autonomous vehicles.
Yeah, Gary, it's really exciting to be here because it's the buzz of CES right now. Tomorrow on Friday, the race will be held at the Las Vegas Speedway. And for the first time, we'll have side-by-side competition between these autonomous open-wheeled race cars.
Yeah, and Fred, I thought this was really fascinating, really interesting event at the Speedway in October, and then to get that invitation to go out to CES to put on another show, kind of a vote of confidence to what's happening in that sector, and in particular maybe here in Indiana.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really genius, for the state to do this, because as we've seen out here in our display, and so much buzz around this car that's on display. It's a real draw, a magnet for startup companies and others to come in and figure out what Indiana is up to. And of course, we have a lot to tell them. And then we invite them to the race on Friday as well. Yeah. So Indiana's definitely making a big statement out here this week.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that, Fred. What does it do for the Indiana brand, if you will, when it comes to manufacturing and innovation and technology, to be at CES, to have the autonomous challenge out there, to have a contingent, you and others from Indiana, to be out there, kind of create some buzz around Indiana as a place maybe folks might want to do business?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very diverse contingent of folks out here. It's quite amazing, from universities to startup organizations and so on, and IEDC, of course. But I think what it does for the brand is just show that, we're a place to come to, be involved in a very advanced tech ecosystem broadly across the state. And we've got evidence of that, some of what you reported on earlier, but also all of these initiatives, including, the Indy Autonomous Challenge, shows that, we're up to the challenge here, and we've got a lot of evidence to back that up.
Fred, you've been in your role since July, so you're settled in now. And I know really that digital adoption and technology and innovation, really key focus areas for you. There was indications, or have been indications certainly, that in some respects, for all of Indiana's strengths in manufacturing, it had fallen behind in that digital area. But now some signs that maybe folks are embracing, manufacturers are embracing technology and innovation as we move forward.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a fascinating thing to watch, Gary. I mean, for me, coming in July and seeing through such initiatives as these manufacturing readiness grants that the state has helped fund and that Connexus Indiana have administered, is to see how much difference these have made over a period of about a year and a half. I mean, companies, it seemed like were just at the doorstep of wanting to make some investments, and maybe they were pushed along a little bit by some of the challenges of COVID and not being able to find people and so on. But the level of interest in automation, in additive manufacturing, 3D printing, is just been enormous all across the state. So not just central Indiana, but across the entire state.
Yeah, I know, Fred, there's a case to be made that, automation, everybody looks at that, or many look at that and see automation and translate that to job loss. But that's not necessarily the case as you look to the future and, with cobots and all those types of things, that automation can actually strengthen and enhance the workplace.
No, I think that's exactly right. I think it helps to encourage companies and others to upskill, their workforce for what's to come. And increasingly smart manufacturing requires, skills to make sure that they progress.
Fred Cartwright is the president and CEO at Connexus Indiana, coming to us this week from Las Vegas. They say what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas when it comes to Indiana and technology. Let's hope that's not the case, that the word gets out in Las Vegas. Fred, appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks, Gary. Appreciate it very much.
All right. Well, 2021 was a challenging year, but a strong one for Indiana's technology sector. While final numbers for the year are still being tallied, the state set a record for venture capital investment in the third quarter, that according to TechPoint. CEO Mike Langelier says the growth can be attributed to a blossoming startup community in the state, as well as VC firms having big piles of cash to invest. Langelier says talent attraction has to remain a priority for Indiana in the year ahead, and adds TechPoint will increase its focus on developing talent within the state and also attracting from outside of Indiana. Well, Ascension St. Vincent says a new addition at its Indianapolis campus means the hospital can now handle any emergency patient right through its doors, no matter their age or injury. Business of Health reporter Kylie Valletta is here with more. Kylie.
Thank you, Gary. The hospital recently opened a new burn center at its flagship campus for both adult and pediatric patients. On the same day, St. Vincent also opened a new pediatric trauma center at Peyton Manning Children's Hospital, which is on the same campus at 86th Street. St. Vincent leaders say the two projects help the hospital meet its mission to treat the entire family under one roof. Joining me now to tell us more is Dr. Gerry GIBBS, Medical Director of the new St. Vincent Burn Center. Dr. GIBBS, thank you for being on the show today.
It's great to be here.
So you are Medical Director of the new Burn Center. We mentioned also St. Vincent opened the Pediatric Trauma Center the same day. Explain how these two projects together are going to expand the spectrum of patients that you can treat at St. Vincent.
Well, it really rounds out the capabilities of the hospital system to treat traumatic injuries. St. Vincent's is already a level 1 adult trauma center, but adding in pediatrics and the adult and pediatric burn center really gives us the capability of handling pretty much anything that comes to our doorstep. The nice part about having the adult pediatric burn center and the trauma programs is it's all encompassing, and it's all encompassing under one roof. For instance, say if you had a family that was involved in a house fire and was brought to the burn center, we'd be able to place the parents and the children next to each other within the burn unit. If they had other traumatic injuries, the pediatric ICU and the trauma ICU are just a short distance down the hall, so everyone is in very close relationship to each other.
And of all the things that St. Vincent could have added at its campus, why did St. Vincent choose a burn center in particular?
Well, one, it does round out the capabilities of the hospital, but two, burn centers across the country usually run at very high capacity. So you're basically adding 8 additional beds to the regional capabilities of Indiana and the Midwest as a whole. So it really does increase our medical capacity to take care of patients.
And typically in the past, I know you had a small burn unit, but you would have to transfer patients, correct?
Correct. St. Vincent's was taking care of some smaller burns, but previously they were transferring them to other burn centers, and now they're able to handle all of these burns right here on the 86th Street campus, along with their pediatric and adult trauma programs.
And one feature of the new burn center, it has some hydrotherapy rooms. Can you explain what those are, the importance of those, and also some of the other features of the burn center?
Sure. So the center was designed to be all-encompassing. The thought process there was that the physicians and the caregiver come to the patients shouldn't have to go to the caregivers. So from the time they're admitted to the burn center, they will remain in the burn unit, whether they are ICU or floor patient. The unit itself is an 8-bed unit. It has 2 hydrotherapy rooms, which is where we do a lot of our wound care daily for cleaning and dressing wounds. There's a in-unit physical therapy area, so patients don't have to leave the unit to do their physical therapy. It is completely bariatric capable, including the hydrotherapy rooms, and we have shower carts in the rooms, which are pretty much the standard of care these days. So everything can be handled right there in the unit, and patients don't have to leave until it's time to go home or they're being transferred out to a rehab.
And you mentioned off camera that the burn center can also focus on long-term reconstruction, and you can think about that in the beginning of treatment for a patient. And a lot of burn centers don't have that capability, correct?
That's correct. So sometimes burn centers have physicians who are general surgeons and sometimes plastic surgeons or a combination of both. There is a handful of us around the country who have done general surgery training and surgical critical care training and plastic surgery training and are board certified in all three. And what that does is it gives me the ability to see those patients acutely and think long term. Okay, here's what we have to do today. Here's what we have to do a week from now, a month from now, a year from now, and kind of start putting all the pieces you need to put together to kind of lay out a consistent and cohesive plan from day one through their long-term reconstructive needs in a year or two. And I think that having surgeons that have both the acute training and the reconstructive training allows us to formulate that plan a little bit better and kind of implement it a little bit more seamlessly across the spectrum of their care.
And just a little bit of time left, but tell us quickly about the outpatient clinic. You also can focus on outpatients at this burn center.
That's right. So the burn center has outpatient is fully capable of handling patients on stretchers, wheelchairs. We have the physical therapy center within the outpatient clinic. So when patients come to have their wounds checked, they can also do physical therapy on site. In addition to that, we have child life that comes over to the clinic, as well as our physical therapists, our social workers, so we can follow up and really meet the needs of these patients from a physical, emotional, social well-being standpoint. So it's all encompassing from start to finish. In addition to that, we also have a dedicated operating room for these patients with some state-of-the-art laser therapy that we use for some of the reconstructive needs.
All right, Dr. Gibbs, well, congratulations on the new center, and thanks for being on the show today to tell us about it.
Thank you very much for having me.
And Gary, back to you.
All right, Kylie, thank you. Well, zeroing in on one subject like the art of wind or fly fishing for 3 weeks, every day, all day, we'll explain why some Central Indiana high school students are doing just that. Well, imagining spending 3 weeks every day, all day, learning about the art of wind or fly fishing or the New Yorker magazine. Well, that's exactly what students at University High School in Hamilton County are doing. They're taking a break from traditional class schedules and instead studying a single subject all day, every day through a program called January Term. For more on this unconventional and innovative approach to learning, pleased to be joined by University High School Head of School, Alicia LaMagdalene. And Alicia, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Gary. Great to be here.
Absolutely. Hey, before we get into January Term or J Term, I want to talk a little bit about University High School because, and I remember when the school opened, doesn't seem like it's been almost 22 years now, but founded in 2000. Talk about the roots of the school, of University High School, an independent school there in Carmel.
Yeah, we are an independent, standalone high school, non-sectarian high school. We really were founded by board members and parents from some K through 8 schools in Indianapolis who in the kind of the late 90s were looking for another independent, non-religious high school. So they came together and put together a feasibility study and determined that metropolitan Indianapolis could sustain another independent high school, and University High School was formed.
Yeah, and you have grown from humble beginnings, 40 students or so in the beginning, now up to 340 students in the high school. And as we talked about before we started to tape here, schools like yours are always looking for new ways to connect with students, new ways to really better educate them. And I guess that's the genesis for the January Term or J Term.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, really thinking about the education that you or I might have had where, you know, the internet didn't exist. We had to learn things by rote, date, facts, formulas that kids now carry around access to in their pockets. So how do you connect or show them, help them connect those things to real world learning, to projects they may encounter in a career or in a college course? So we're really working to break down the traditional kind of static, this is one disciplinary subject, this is chemistry or social studies, and particularly in J-term, show them how all of those things connect in a real living way.
Yeah, I think I had an abacus back in the day, but that's neither here nor there. We'll talk about J-term because I think it is interesting. I know DePauw, as an example, at the collegiate level, has a winter term where they take the entire month of January and do things. So it's kind of like that, I guess, but you really do zero in on very specific focus areas.
Yes. So all of our students, grades 9 through 12, they're in mixed classes, all age ranges. They're taking one class all day long for 3 weeks. And our offerings change every year. So this year we're doing things like the history of the national parks, the art of wind that you mentioned, one on fly fishing. And they come from student ideas. They come from faculty ideas of just, what are interesting things in the world, and can we learn more about them and learn how to do critical thinking, deep questioning as a part of that study. The one thing that we offer every year is an internship program. So we do have about 20 students this year who aren't on campus in a class. They're out shadowing a veterinarian or a lawyer or a doctor and learning about that experience as part of the J-term program.
Very interesting indeed. Alicia, as you look at the campus, the school, the growth opportunities, I know in 2018 you really undertook a campus master plan. Talk about growth opportunities or where you see the future at University High School.
Yeah, we did some extensive master planning in 2018 to just look at the land that we had. We had 115 acres here in southern Hamilton County, which is a lot of real estate to have in one spot that was relatively underdeveloped. And we planned out what would the campus need to look like if we were to grow to 400 students? I think at that time we were just below 300. Mm-hmm. And I don't know that 400 is where we'll end up in the near term, but we wanted to make sure we had room for additional classroom buildings, theater seating, sports fields. And we did that master planning to think about what we would need and what we would have left. And we had some acreage that we did sell in 2018 to monetize to help the school because we realized we wouldn't need it. Even if we got to our max capacity, we had about 35 acres we wouldn't use. And the other project we have created is we want to build a Habitat for Community Learning Center. So we're right here adjacent to West Park, which has continual standing wetlands. We want to tie in a teaching and learning lab that becomes one cohesive ecosystem with West Park and what they're doing. And that's probably the near-term project that we're hoping to get going here in the next 2 years.
All right, a lot going on at University High School, much of it driven by innovation, to be sure. Alicia LaMagdalene, the head of school at University High School. Alicia, thanks very much for joining us, and we'll hope to see you soon.
Yeah, thank you, Gary. Have a great day.
All right. Here's what's making news now around Indiana. Well, former University of Evansville head men's basketball coach Walter McCarty has filed a lawsuit against the school. Our partners at WEHT TV report McCarty claims UE owes him at least $75,000. The university fired McCarty in January 2020 for alleged sexually inappropriate behavior. McCarty says the school fired him because it could not afford to pay performance bonuses. In a statement, UE says the coach was fired for, quote, violating the terms of his contract and engaging in behavior contrary to the core values of the university. White Construction, a subsidiary of Indianapolis-based Infrastructure and Energy Alternatives, has secured a $44 million contract to lead construction of a wind farm in Riverside County, California. IEA says it will self-perform all engineering and construction of 15 wind turbines, 2 substations and meteorological evaluation towers, and an underground electrical collector system. California, the second largest producer of wind energy in the nation. To date, it is estimated that nearly $12 billion has been invested in California wind farms. Grace College and Seminary President Dr. Bill Cadup has retired earlier than anticipated. The college says Cadup will continue in the role of senior advisor through the upcoming school year. The Grace Board of Trustees has named Dr. John Teven as interim president. Grace says Cadup's tenure is marked by several big initiatives, including an accelerated 3-year bachelor's degree program, a 4-year bachelor's and master's program, and Grace's competency-based seminary program as well, Deploy. Grace says it expects to announce a president before the end of the school year. Well, Fort Wayne Mayor Tom Henry has put an emphasis on education as a key driver to help move Indiana's second largest city forward. Henry is my guest this week on the Business and Beyond podcast. He's serving his fourth term and has helped guide a city that once relied primarily on manufacturing into one of Indiana's most diverse and dynamic economies. Henry grew up in a big tribe, one of, get this, 17 children, which helped guide him and many of his siblings into a life of public service.
Mom and Dad tried to instill in us a real need for service to others. I try very hard to be a good public servant, to be a servant leader. So Fort Wayne has been very good to the Henry family, and we in turn are trying to give back in our own way.
Much more with Fort Wayne Mayor Tom Henry on the next Business and Beyond podcast. To check it out, just go to InsideIndianaBusiness.com and click on the subscribe tab. Well, up next, the crush of COVID patients at Indiana hospitals and the impact on ambulance service. Our partners at the IBJ with what it means for patient care. Well, when the most recent surge of COVID cases overwhelmed central Indiana hospitals last month, it had an alarming ripple effect on emergency services. Ambulances diverted for thousands of hours, which had a big impact on patient care. For more on that and a look at other stories coming up in this weekend's IBJ, pleased to welcome, as always, editor Leslie Weidenbender. And Leslie, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
I want to talk about that investigation, very interesting, but certainly football is kind of taking center stage here in Indianapolis. We did the first half hour of the show on that. You guys are all over it, not only talking football and economy, but also entertainment as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of really good shows scheduled for Saturday, Sunday, and Monday right on the circle. Weather's going to be a big player here because weather's going to range from the 20s up to the 40s. And of course, in the evenings, it's going to be chilly. But they've been building a big stage on the north side of the circle, which is not where we're used to seeing it. So it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, it's been fun to watch it as we're in the office downtown.
That's right. We can see it. And one of the neat things we learned about this week is that before the concerts, there's actually going to be an aerial acrobatics or dance troupe off of Salesforce Tower.
Yeah, that will be something to watch. So lots of coverage on the College Football National Championship. Plus, I mentioned that investigation, really interesting, the rush on hospitals and diverting ambulances. You know, John Russell did doing a big story on that.
Yeah, he looked at a 6-week period in the fall. This was at the end of one of the last surges, the beginning, and then with things cooling down a little bit. And even during the time when things were getting better, emergency rooms were telling or encouraging ambulances to take patients elsewhere. Now, ambulances can still bring a patient to a hospital, even when a hospital goes on what they call diversion status. But there were several days during this period where almost every hospital was discouraging ambulances from bringing them patients.
Wow, interesting story. You know, certainly solar and wind getting a lot of attention here in Indiana, around the country, but really interesting to me how much here in Indiana, and I know it's caught the eye of legislators as well.
Yeah, it's some of the projects in some parts of the state, go into effect pretty easily and get zoning approval and get approval from local officials. And then in other places, Boone County, for example, they just rejected a proposal. And the Indiana Chamber and some other organizations are concerned that Indiana's never going to catch up on alternative energy sources if there aren't some statewide regulations that help cite these kinds of solar and wind projects.
Yeah. One other one, real quickly, tax climate. It's been a big selling point for Indiana. I know you're going to have a bet on the tax climate here in the state of Indiana.
Yeah, Indiana's in the top 10 according to the Tax Foundation in terms of tax climate. But what's interesting is that Indiana's #1 in property taxes. And if you look at the proposals at the legislature, cutting the personal property tax is the #1 priority.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see if doing that really makes a difference in terms of the business climate.
Very good. Lots of great stuff in this weekend's IBJ. Leslie Weidenbender, as always, thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right. Well, Indianapolis-based Sun King Brewing Company continues to expand its footprint by opening its first brewery and tap room outside of Indiana. Sun King says the new Sarasota, Florida brewery will take over an existing 5,000 square foot space. The brewery and tap room to include 18 taps, including core beers like Sunlight Cream Ale and Orange Vanilla Cream Ale, as well as some seasonal and specialty beers. Sun King operates 4 tap rooms in the Indianapolis metro area and 1 in Kokomo, and plans to open a location in Mishawaka yet this year. And I'll be right back after this. Stay with us. Well, before we go, we wanted you to meet a man who some college football fans say has one of the coolest jobs around. He's responsible for guarding the college football playoff trophy. Our Mary Rachel Redmond has more from Monument Circle.
And with me, the keeper of the prize, Charlie Green. How long have you been doing this job?
This is actually my 22nd year, going back to when it was a crystal football.
And you've taken good care of it.
Yes, 22 years, I've never lost one or broken one. We have a few near misses, especially when fans get close to it or when the players start passing it around after the game. But just a few more days here, we plan to keep it safe.
And you said close to 5,000 people are going to touch this trophy?
Nobody's going to touch the trophy. We expect about 5,000 people to get their photo with it between now and Monday at Fan Central.
And you've got a special sign, right?
Yeah, the one rule, as I was saying, is please do not touch the trophy. This is the actual trophy will be on the field on Monday night, so we have to keep it clean and safe.
So until it's whether Alabama or Georgia wins that championship.
Then it'll be all theirs, and they'll pass it around on the field, and it's up to them what to do.
An awesome job indeed. Well, as we leave you this week, some images from downtown Indianapolis as the city prepares to host college football's biggest game. Enjoy the game and the weekend. We'll see you next week.